All right, so I'm going to try to talk about something that's become difficult to talk about. It's become really difficult to talk about because I'm trying to reconnect with my innocence, right? I'm trying to reconnect with like my innocence, and I don't mean it. Right. So we know there's this evil and this butchery, this malice in the world. We know there's this evil butchery and this malice in the world. Yet at the same time, we know there's this like beauty and lightness and achievement and everything. And so I see that within myself. And so the innocence that I'm trying to connect to, reconnect to, or connect to, when I was a little kid, I remember I would, on my grandmother's couch, I have a picture of it somewhere. I think I might post it soon. Of this ridiculous floral pattern. But anyway, I remember being small enough, and I remember like laying down on the seat of the couch. So a couch goes like this. There's the if you're looking at it lengthwise, there's the back of the couch and the seat. And I'd lay down with my head hanging upside down and my feet up where an adult's back would normally be. And I'd go, like I didn't know why. I just did it. And I also remember at that age, we're talking like 3, 4, 5. I also remember that at that age I could blow air through my eyes. And as I got older, yeah, at that age I thought it was quite a thing. I could blow air through my eyes. I could like clench up my nose and my mouth and blow air through my eyes. And as I've gotten older, I'm like, was I just imagining that? Is that really a thing? And then I don't know, like 3 years ago, I was listening to an audiobook, and it mentioned how like breathing through your eyes, like right here. Well, that's where it was for me, like right around the tear duct, like was a deep yogic practice. And I was like, anyway. But even at that young age, I was sexualized. I remember my kindergarten. It was a hypersexualized kindergarten. Anyway, so what I'm going to talk about is going to be like a little bit more like rated NC-17, unrated, rated X, up to triple X in language for a minute or two. Just saying. Fair warning. Um, because I know some people are offended by that. I know some people are offended by that because sometimes I'm offended by that. And yet, at other times, I could hear the most raunchy, crazy shit, and I'd be like, or like, oh yeah. But I'm actually trying to make a philosophical point because philosophy, religion, science, biology, none of that is outside of the realm of raunch. None of it. It all has to make sense. So, what I was going to talk about, and a lot of it has to do with the aesthetic of my channel and the ways in which I justify the aesthetic of my channel, of my message, but yet at the same time as my message, warts and all, like how I justify that, or how I would justify that in a rational argument. And it goes like this. the preposition or the preface to my argument is that nothing is outside of the scope of reason. Because it's not. And you know, with all the things going on in the world today and the way in which I'm not opposed to the redefining of pronouns at all. I think we should. I just think it's been done wrong. I think there hasn't been enough attention paid to etymology, nor has there been attention paid to the Underground Railroad goes back like 10,000 years. And women have been weaving this story in symbols. Women have evolved, the smartest among them, just like there's the smartest among men and the dumbest among men. As it turns out, the smartest among women are the most cunning. And that's evolutionary, because they had to be. They absolutely had to be. And that can go in the good or bad direction. But the great evolution of the Underground Railroad, not just between blacks and whites, not just in the United States, though super important, that crux, that cross, that Mason-Dixon, like super important. It was the death blow. It was the death blow to the face of slavery. The spirit of slavery still exists in the underground. And that's not just a conspiracy. I mean, you know, that's mainstream, even though the mainstream doesn't bring it up much. But when it does, it lays it out like it is. Very rarely. And increasingly less rare. But anyway, with all the things with like redefining pronouns, this, that, whatever, but how like women in this whole mix are still just shoved down, man. In a country, if you walked out your house today and you saw 10 women with hairy legs, if you saw 10 women hairy as me, and people don't realize also, there are women who have as much hair like as me. There are women this hairy. And the lengths that they secretly go to, locked in their bathrooms. You know, locked in their bathrooms, the lengths that they have secretly gone to. So in a world where, you know, so we're talking about all this social justice, but like in a world where women can't even be women, people don't realize it. No one wants to talk about it. But there are some hairy fucking women out there. Hairy. Fucking hairy. Sasquatch. For real. Why haven't people seen Bigfoot? Because Bigfoot waxes. So does Littlefoot. Anyway. So what I was trying to get to was good fucking. I wouldn't say I've taken a vow of celibacy, but basically, you know, my fucking days are over. And I was quite promiscuous as a young person. And, you know, I'm sorry if you find that hideous because of the way I look. I also find it hideous. I find the way I look hideous. The best defense I have against that is to giggle. But anyway, and I'm going to be rude and crude because I was in that world. I was in that world. I lived that life. I know what it's like. Not in a malicious way, not in a vicious way, not in a violent way, but in like a hungry way. I know what it's like to hunt pussy. Right? Been there. I know I just look like some of this whatever now, you know. That's fine. But I know what it's like to hunt pussy. And I made more mistakes than I made successes. You know, when I was all cleaned up and bright, I still couldn't, you know, back when I was 30, I still couldn't pick up a toothless chick fucking 50, 60 years old down the bar down the road, right? That's a pretty big strikeout. But we have to be comfortable being honest. We just have to be comfortable being honest if we're going to be philosophical. And we have to forgive. I still haven't forgiven myself. But this is what it takes for me. I have to put shit out there that's open to the world. So confession is being converted to, instead of the priest, the entire fucking world. I'm not confessing to one priest, I'm confessing to every priest. And every parishioner. I'm asking forgiveness for my lewdness, but I'm also asking to seek out a specific question, which I'll come to. So anyway, back when I was younger, and I'm just going to try to say it the way, you know, because I can enter that. I'm still that guy. I fight it every fucking day. It's like Peter in the Hunger Games, right? Peter in the Hunger Games, he was a good boy, and then they got him. And they switched it. And then he was a malicious boy. And then afterwards he had to like constantly be like blah 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 blah. And that's how I am now concerning women, because I became so lustful and so disenchanted, so unmagical, so unreligious, so unworshipful of another soul. Never mind woman, soul. And it still happens to this day, right? You see what has been defined as a beautiful woman, and it's like, zoop. For that matter, if you see a man walking like a hot woman, zoop. If you're, you know, I'm pretty much straight. I tried. I'll be honest. Though it was only in my lust. Well, I shouldn't say that. In my lust, I tried to be gay because I used to be a big purveyor of porn. Huge, you know. I worked in a video store starting when I was 16. They had porn. I wasn't supposed to take none, but of course I took some. Worked in a bookstore when I was younger that had like a huge magazine selection, including like 100 porn mags. Bookland down in Keene. It's out of business now. It used to be in a strip mall, then it moved to Main Street. Last I knew it was Fritz's Fries, but it might not be that no more. But anyway. They had a huge porn collection, so I scoped all that shit. So I'd try to look at porn, I'd try to look at he, she's and stuff, you know. And if you don't like that term, like, just get the fuck over it, man. Like, we're living in a butcherous fucking world. That's what I knew them then as, and that was what was on the shelf. And when you're talking about smut, it's okay to say he, she's. Anyway. No one's ever gonna watch this, but whatever. So yeah, I tried to get into it, and there was a gay dude who worked at the store. There were a lot of gay people who used to come in and buy gay porn and shit. Some were kind of inappropriate, some weren't. You know. One time, a guy came in who looked just fucking like me. Just like me. Exactly like me. And I was looking at him like, and I thought he was looking at me for the same reason like this. He was looking at me like, I won't describe the rest of the story, but it became clear he was giving me the fuck me eyes. Anyway, give me the up down. I don't know why, man. But anyway. Do I want to do this? When I was younger, right, because I try to talk about serious shit, and I can also be like kind of light and like very childish or whatever, but I can be a bro, or whatever. Or I have that capacity to an extent. Still, for a while I was just that, or mostly that. Used to be a lot more, for a time, liberal about sex, and then just, yeah, flat out lusty and promiscuous, cheating, jumping around. And I guess there's good and bad to that. Certainly a lesson. Anyway. And that's what it has to do with the aesthetic of this channel, and it has to do with the specific question that I'm posing that has to do with the Most High. None of anything is outside of it. Nothing. So we have to deal with it. If you're not lustful, I mean, I wasn't a Will Chamberlain, but if Jimi Hendrix asked me if I was experienced, I'd be like, well, kinda. Like, yeah, I'm experienced. I ain't a pro. I'm no Will Chamberlain. But like, and part of the reason I'm deciding to talk about this is because in my first Prophecy Protocol video, it's hard to find, but if you pause the video at the right spot, there's a part where it's like Eric Weinstein video with the girl's name who I forget, where he talked about her on another podcast, and then so I searched it, and it's this famous porn star who I'm not familiar with, that he had like a sit down, like serious conversation with, And then my previous Prophecy Protocol, well, my my 04 Prophecy Protocol video was about, I pulled up WAP, right? Or a reaction to WAP. Wet ass pussy. And I was a little bit like, but I have to remind myself, first of all, that I weren't never no porn star. I'm obviously, I don't look good. So it's, and I'm trying to overcome that hunger of lust. I'm trying very hard. And I'm trying very hard to overcome it from the standpoint of knowing it. Yeah, certainly not to her level, but, I'm familiar. I'm experienced, right? if you're not that, I wouldn't dismay. Because there's no answer to the philosophical question that I'm about to pose. There's no answer to it. Or at least popularly. And that's where we need to get to popularly. So this is going to sound probably pretty bad to some people. But it's, where I came from. And it's part of the question, so it's really important. And yeah, I'm still a drunk. I guess you could say I'm an alcoholic, pretty much. I'd be a drug addict if I could go to the store and buy them. The problem with drugs is that you got to deal with the black market, and it's just not worth the trouble. Which means, like, you always got to fuck around. It's like you go to get some drugs, and it's like, oh, there's a bunch of guns. Shit like that. And it's like, not that that's, mostly that's not the case, but shit like that comes up, right? But that's the same thing in law-abiding life. Right? There are those who break the law who are just sweet as fucking, peaches and cream. Just sweet as can be. Who are lawbreakers. And then there are lawbreakers who are like, this dude's fucking nuts. And there are law abiders, letter of the law. And there are law abiders who are really great, good people. And there are law breakers who are, or law abiders who are like, this is the nastiest fucker I ever met, So in some sense, there are many lawbreakers and law abiders who live in the spirit of the law, who have more in common with lawbreakers and law abiders who live in and outside the letter of the law only. Anyway, what I'm trying to get to is this whole conundrum of like physicality in the senses. Physicality in the senses. Behavioralism. And it's also interesting that behavioralism is associated with B.F. Skinner. B.F. That's what we call a town right across the river. B.F. Bells Falls. Interesting, but B.F. Skinner and how child molesters are called Skinners. Right? It's interesting. But it's a problem we have to deal with. This urge, this lust, at the same time as we're trying to deal with this glory, this beauty, this light. Right? So whatever the doctrine is, has to go all the way down and all the way up. And it must do that whether you're a theist or an atheist. Whatever your philosophy is, it has to run the gamut. It has to fill the spectrum. It has to be true all the way up, all the way down, from the beginning to the end. Period. So it's something we have to deal with. And if you don't live by a unified theory, at least on a personal level, that fills you completely, then it means there's work to do. And these are among the issues we have to deal with. Because sex is what brings us into the world. Whatever beauty exists in me existed in that one guttural hump. Ugh! Jeff. That's something we have to deal with, right? No matter how that came about. Anyway, what I was gonna say. So this is the like rated X part. I guess it's really not that bad, but I'm kind of embarrassed, but I'm loosening up about it a little bit. I wish I could be more funny about it because I used to try to crack jokes a lot, right? When my friends get them laughing. But it's also true. And I noticed it. Because when you're younger, you're after the hot popular girl, right? The hot popular girl. That you can connect with, right? It's not just all about that, but unfortunately, that's kind of what it boils down to. Because there's something to attraction. What makes someone attractive? The aesthetics may change from place to place, but like there's an aesthetic, there's an overall aesthetic of speech, of dress, of whatever. Never mind just pure physical power of form. All shit we got to deal with. But anyway, okay, I'm just gonna say it. I'm just gonna say it like I said it when I was 19, roughly speaking. I'm sure without the gravitas. But like, there's hot chicks, hot pussy, and good fucking. So that's how I used to talk about it. But it really boils it down, and I'm sure if you've been promiscuous, you know what I mean. And even though it summons a loud presence, within the spirit of lust, like, and even though I'm deeply ashamed of reducing my encounters to that, I think it's relatable to anyone who's been promiscuous, which is kind of a lot of people. Even though people don't want to talk about it. People don't talk about it that way, right? So, like, there's someone listening to this now, if anyone's listening to this, there's someone listening to this now who's like, you shouldn't say that, even though you've been, like, a tramp, a garish rake, a slut, whatever, and you know exactly what I'm fucking talking about. When you were surprised by someone who was hot. You were surprised by someone who was hot, who was like lousy in bed, right? Or a bad kisser, or just not you didn't click with, or just whatever. In any, it doesn't even have to go all the way to fucking, you know. And then on the other side, there's been some hog that you've been like, damn. Or some pig. And then never mind what's going on inside of you. Maybe someone fits all the bills. They meet all three criteria, and you still just can't get the job done. And you're like, what the fuck? And then there's someone who fails all three criterias, and you dump it on their thigh. Ugh. Laughing stock. All of that exists within reality, religion, philosophy, biology, sociology, psychology, the whole bag. It all has to make sense. And counterintuitively, if you're experienced, I shouldn't say counterintuitively, but like good fucking trumps hot pussy, trumps hot chicks. Because there are ugly chicks with hot pussies. And there are hot chicks with ugly pussies. Depends what you mean, how we define it. And that comes back to the whole entire philosophy, right? So I'm saying this, and it's crude, it's awful, it's terrible the way I'm speaking of women, right? It is. Right? But if you're a dude, you know what I'm talking about. And if you're a woman, you know what I'm talking about. Just supplant cock, penis, whatever. Same bag, right? Balls, you know. Pink, healthy. You know. Does it look like a, you know, I don't know. Does it look like a worm or a mushroom that went bad? You know what I'm saying? So on and so forth. Size, all that kind of thing. So, but, you know, for some women, probably that doesn't even come up because they're so subjugated and so, I wouldn't even say closed off or repressed, because repression has a lot more to do with love than sexuality. Love, respect. And there are a lot of women living around the world who live in environments, you know, close to home and certainly afar, where it's just so difficult to get by. And in some places, it's just so difficult to even find anyone. In a lot of places in the world, it's still very difficult to find a man who has any respect at all, any capacity for love. And I'm deeply ashamed for the women who have come into my life, who I wish I could have been friends with and offered love to. Unfortunately, most of the women who I liked, I mean, I lusted after women, but I also just really liked, you know, like as friends, like, wow, this is an amazing person, you know. And unfortunately, I just fell in love like that. But some I didn't, who I still thought were hot. That's a problem. And that's a problem in the world. And solving it in myself, I can't help solve that problem in the world if I don't solve it with myself. So it's not just about the politically correct talk. It's like, no, fucking nuts and bolts. We still live in a butcherous world. We gotta solve this fucking problem. But at the same time, without that sex, without that attraction, none of us would be here. I shouldn't say none of us. A lot of us wouldn't be here. And there's all these philosophies and these you know, because you got different types of science on one side, and then you got different types of, you know, gender studies or psychologies and sociologies. And the unfortunate thing here's the problem too, is that one of the unfortunate things about what's happening with the discussion and the politics of gender today is that its arguments are born out of a sub-philosophical narrative critique doctrine. It's like a semi-pseudo sub-philosophical narrative critique. Doctrine's not the right word. I hope I come to the right word. Not doctrine. Best I can do is subgenre, but that's not the right word. Maybe I can annotate it later. And it's not deeply rooted. It's not deeply rooted in depth or breadth. I'll get later. I'll get to some point as to why it is that has taken hold. It's taken hold because that's what's most persuasive. Reform need be done in truth. And what's happening now is that, quote unquote, the enemy is rising because the truth is rising. And the enemy is expert at narrative. What enemy? The enemy. Division. But then if we look back through the spiritual traditions, and we'll leave Immaculate Conception alone for the moment, even though, Dan Winters presents the most scientific argument that I've ever heard, and it has something to do with, like, the Planck, the radius of hydrogen, the Planck somewhere in the Planck distance, I guess, the Planck distance, because there's the Planck time and the Planck distance, but the Planck raised to the Planck times phi, Planck times parentheses phi, close parentheses, to the 1/16th, 1/17th, 1/18th. Planck times parentheses phi parentheses 1/16, Planck parentheses phi parentheses 1/17th, Planck parentheses phi parentheses 1/18th. It's beyond me, But he goes on, man. An implosion. That's also related to the idea of the 5-chambered versus the 4-chambered heart, which had Anais Nin known. Had Anais Nin known, there were 5 chambers, she might have stuck around a while. That 5th chamber, essentially, potentially, in esoterica, an implosion point. Which brings up the question between metal pumpkin seed UFOs and World War II Foo Fighter Fireball UFOs. I'm sad that I don't know more and I can't be more consistent and offer more proof that's just like easy to understand. But anyway, the like dealing with that sexual, visceral, sensual hunger that there's no, so far as I can tell, like there's no bottom to. It just goes on forever. And I'm not even saying that that's necessarily a bad thing. But if it's not spiritually grounded with the love that goes forever, then you're going forever in the wrong direction. You're collapsing upon the wrong limit or a false limit. And the whole idea with like good fucking is like if the lights are off. And this has to go back into like the whole idea with aesthetics. I'm enough of a guy to know that like I get a boner when I see a hot babe, right? But now that I've gotten older and I've been so Pavlovianized, I can be triggered by ugly women who have a shirt, a soft shirt. Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, all kinds of things that are associated with what my life, you know, I've been exposed to sex in a myriad of ways between media and life, smells, clothing, aesthetics, textures. But like, what about like what about a woman who looks like just like me? You know, really hairy, not like an hourglass, you know, fucked up looking boobs, who's just a sexual monster. And I'm only asking you to think about that. Like, what if the best fuck you ever had in your whole life? And it, you know, I know I'm a drunk. I know I'm a crazy looking motherfucker. But it actually is a legitimate, good philosophical question. Concerned with like aesthetics, the way we treat women, the way we subjugate women, the way we subjugate ourselves as men, the way we judge ourselves as men, especially in this modern day. Because it's getting to be the same way with men. Everybody's got to be manscaped, right? Yeah. There are, and I'm not against all that, even though I look despicable, right? Like, I have a great respect for people who take care of themselves and who are physically fit and who like look really good and who are really healthy. Like, that is so admirable. Like, I love that. I'm not against that at all. I'm not against Ken dolls, even though I am the epitome of the anti-Ken doll. Like, I'm not against that at all. I think that's great if you put heart behind it. That's all. It's amazing. And never mind like the health benefits and like the hygiene benefits. It's like we have these tools, we can shave. You know, you know, because being a very hairy person, I get all kinds of different like rashes and skin things, and being as though I don't take time to shower because it's like, well, I can either shower or I can make this video and then I'll be so tired and have had enough to drink that I'm gonna pass out, right? Like, I'm a total fucking mess. Yet there's a philosophical point to it. I hope to come out from the other side, which would give credence to this dirty fool. But it's important that I make good points, even in my brokenness. It's important that we all do that. For sure. But yeah, it speaks to all of that. And one of the things we should learn, those of us who are alive now, with this whole COVID thing, even though I really doubt anyone will ever watch these videos while COVID is still a thing. Maybe. Maybe it'll go on longer than I think. But we've been taught what it's like to have to wear a mask everywhere. But like, think of being a woman. Like, women have always had to deal with a greater inconvenience than that. Yeah, there are some who haven't, just because of like the lottery of genetics, who were born like super not hairy and super hot and super smart, right? They won the lottery, great. But what about like a really stupid, ugly, fat, hairy, skanky, like, looking woman? Fucked. Totally fucked. And like, whatever mental capacity she has. In my free time, I have the luxury, being a man, of not shaving. Maybe I can put on a little bit cleaner of a sweatshirt one day, and like, that's enough to get by. I got paint all over me, and people are just like, oh, dirty painter. As long as I'm like polite enough when I go to the convenience store, and as long as like when I'm painting at work, I do a pretty good job, I can pretty much be as dirty and smelly as I want. In the environment that I live in, and in the environment that I paint in, which is, even though it's like country, it's pretty high-end country. It's kind of like fake country. It's like feudal country. A lot of second homes, a lot of third homes, a lot of fourth homes. I'm lucky in that sense. And in that sense, like, it's a great innovation what's happening with the whole like transgender, gay, lesbian movement and so on. Well, there's a lot of good things about it, like letting people be how they are. Yet at the same time, and a lot of that also has to do with the push toward the science of artificial insemination, or just like raising people scientifically. But on a cosmic level, what would it be like on a cosmic, karmic, enlightened level if like two people who were truly enlightened on a spiritual level it's not that I don't think love isn't real, it's just when we don't love ourselves, how can we love someone else? And when we live in a butcherous world, the animals we eat are our cousins. and we're eating that. Most people would think, and I'm not, I'm certainly not suggesting this, but as a philosophical exercise, since we're talking about, lewd things, like, it would be unthinkable for most people, like fucking a dog, fucking a horse. Back in the days, there used to be this channel called Consumption Junction, which was just like fucking free for all. It was like YouTube for the craziest shit. I'm pretty sure it's still shut down. It was kind of like the on the web, black web before there was a black web, right? Had everything. Yeah, I remember there's this video, and it's like, how could you not look? There's this video of a woman. I can't even say it, even though at the time I was like, ah. But like a woman had like this contraption in her private parts with a snake in it. Now, you always hear about, when I was a kid, you'd always hear these things about like, you know what gay people do? And this is bad, in a bad way, thinking about gay people, But yet people do this shit, right? There's fucking, you know, you can look it up right now, or at least right now today, like shit eaters. People eating shit sexually. Right? Have some hot chicks shit in their fucking mouth, and fucking eat it. Right? Who knows? Maybe it's good for you. Maybe it'll save you like $5,000 on a fecal implant. Maybe that's the thing to do. I don't know. I'm not there. But anyway. Alright, so one time on Consumption, I saw a fucking lady put a snake in her vagina. She was loving it. Snake was fine. There was some, I don't know what it was, plastic, this, that, whatever, but it's just like, what the fuck, man? But it's interesting that that's illegal or like weird or fucked up, right? Like, I feel fucked up talking about it. But then, like, I watch some show of someone being like chopping up a snake and eating it. Oh, so good! And that's weird. Probably they're both weird. And I guess what I'm saying is because people deny and say, oh, it's just your emotions, or oh, it's just chemical reactions or whatever. But like, the thing we have to remember is that Pavlov's dog had to get there. Dogs don't eat bells. Oh, it's all just behavioralism and programming. Yeah, but dogs don't eat bells. And it took a lot of dinging to make that happen. And where we have gotten has taken a lot of dinging. We're basically at the apex of the dinging. Like, there's not much further to go. I shouldn't say that. There's a lot further to go, but not... There's not much further we could press this fallacy of sexualism. We've kind of pressed it in all directions. To complete piety, complete hypocrisy, complete perversion, complete, and that's not to deny, and that's another part thing too of what, people don't talk about hermaphrodites, like naturally born hermaphrodites. And also there are genetic men who are born whose testicles don't ever drop, so they're born with what looks like a vagina. They tend to look like butch dykes. What we'd consider a butch dyke, that's kind of how their body looks. They a little bit develop breasts, kind of, but they don't have that hourglass body. They're shaped more like a tube. I learned that from an encyclopedia I had from like back in the 40s. There's a picture of it. And my dad bought me some encyclopedias from a yard sale, and I threw all of them away except for one. But I wish I'd kept that one. I probably kept the picture somewhere, but man, I got so many pictures filed away. But you know, so like that is a genetic man born with what looks like a vagina, even though there's no womb, and so on. And that person's legitimately a man. There's also the idea, so far as the transgender thing goes, that no one ever talks about because it's not part of the milieu, because it's not part of the narrative structure that this entire movement's based upon, is the idea of reincarnation. And some, it's a small percentage, but it's out there. Some transgender people are reincarnated in a different sex, and they didn't quite, because before you break the cycle, well, often, unless you're Melchizedekian, before you break, sort of my understanding, or at the very least poetically, before you break the cycle of reincarnation, if you're not Melchizedekian, in which case you break the cycle in one lifetime. For that, there's also a state where you can be born as a child remembering your past life. So there's that also. And that brings up an entirely different spiritual question of, well, then what's your role? If you were a woman last time and a man this time, is it your job to accept what you've become? Maybe it's your job to be celibate this time and not re-identify. Not identify with either one. Maybe not, I don't know, but it's an interesting question. And in a world where we're talking about fucking robot implants and all this shit, man, that's still based on all the physical world. All this shit about living in the Matrix, it's like, when we're all in the Matrix, no one will be left outside to fucking take care of the thing. This whole living in the AI Matrix thing, it's a non-starter. You won't live forever. You'll live till the crunch, or you'll live till it decays. I mean, when the sun explodes, it's over. Get off the planet, this, that, whatever, all these cycles of evolution, whatever. But the body's already doing that. The body's already beyond that. The mind. The soul. But we have to answer that question, and this is the question, because we separate heaven from earth, right? And this has to do a lot with, like, in that Raphael painting, with Plato like this and Aristotle like this, or Plato like this and Aristotle like this. But it's I'm sure it's a misinterpretation of Plato also. I got beef with the Republic, but even though I don't think that Plato actually believed what he wrote in the Republic, I believe that whoever Plato really was disbelieved the Republic, and it was a test. And if you agreed with it at the end, you're out. And if you disagreed with it and gave an argument, all right. in a sense, Plato's Republic was like in Willow, when the wizard holds up his fingers and says, where's all the magic in the universe or whatever. And nobody chooses their own finger. So they're all out. But anyway, Aristotle's misidentified as being about matter because he chooses identity. Another way of interpreting Aristotle is Plato's like this and Aristotle's like this. Like this. And like this. And like this. As interpreted by Aristotle fed through Iamblichus the Lamb, St. Agnes. But the problem is, there's all these philosophies about separating ourselves from, like, deep philosophies. Effective. Magic. The deal with, like, separating ourselves from our emotions. All these philosophies, all these sciences, and it's just this, it's just that. But, like, the true one science and true one religion that runs through fucking everything. It's the truth that runs through everything. It will prevail. It just matters how many of us are going to be included as we know ourselves, so to speak. We need to reconcile our emotions with our thoughts, with our body. We need to reconcile, repair our emotions. Pavlov's dog doesn't prove that, like, behaviorism, it doesn't prove, like, this, that, whatever. It doesn't prove relativism. That's not what it proves. When something is done wrong to us, we adapt so that we might survive, so that we might survive the wrong thing, outlive the wrong thing. That which was right in us before the wrong thing was done can re-emerge.